Have you ever stopped to think about how small vices can turn into huge barriers in our lives? Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, "It is not what happens to us that disturbs us, but our interpretation of what happens." This statement leads us to reflect on the importance of how we deal with the vices we cultivate in our daily lives. In this video, we will explore 10 vices that can destroy your life, revealing how Stoic philosophy can help us overcome them and find a more serene and balanced path. The vices we will discuss are not just bad habits, but behaviors that, if not recognized and addressed, can lead us to a state of unhappiness and discontent. In a world where we are constantly bombarded by distractions and pressures, Stoic wisdom teaches us to seek true inner freedom, one that comes from self-discipline and self-control. By recognizing these vices, you can start to understand how they affect your life and how, through a change in perspective, it is possible to transform them into opportunities for growth. The importance of this topic cannot be overstated. We live in an era of excesses where instant gratification seems to be the norm. The vices we will address today may seem harmless at first glance, but over time, they can erode our happiness and well-being. Stoic philosophy offers us a powerful lens to critically and rationally examine these behaviors, allowing us to cultivate a fuller and more meaningful life. Throughout this video, you will learn to identify these vices, reflect on their origins, and more importantly, discover Stoic strategies to overcome them. Through the practice of self-knowledge and reflection, you can free yourself from the shackles that these habits impose. The wisdom of Epictetus encourages us to focus on what we can control and to accept what we cannot. This is the essence of Stoic resilience. Understanding that while we cannot avoid certain circumstances, we always have the power to choose how to respond to them. Get ready for a journey of self-discovery and personal transformation. Together, let's explore how we can free ourselves from the vices that bind us and embrace a more conscious and intentional life. By the end of this video, you will have new tools and perspectives that can help you face life's challenges with courage and clarity. So, let's begin this deep reflection and find the path to a more enlightened and free life. Stoicism, a philosophical school that emerged in ancient Greece, has its roots in the thoughts of Zeno of Citium, who lived around the 3rd century BC. This system of thought was developed over the centuries by notable figures such as Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius. These philosophers approached life and the human condition in ways that still resonate deeply today. Seneca, with his letters and essays, discussed issues such as morality and the importance of reason. Epictetus, a former slave who became an influential philosophy teacher, emphasized the importance of self-discipline and control over our reactions. Marcus Aurelius, a Roman emperor and philosopher, documented his personal reflections in Meditations, offering an intimate view of how to apply Stoic principles in a context of power and responsibility. Today, Stoicism is more relevant than ever. We live in an era marked by uncertainty, rapid social changes, and constant crises. People face emotional challenges, pressures at work, complicated relationships, and an incessant flow of information that often leaves us overwhelmed. In this scenario, Stoic teachings can serve as a beacon, guiding us on how to navigate these difficulties. For example, anxiety about the future, insecurity regarding jobs, or pressure to succeed are contemporary issues that can be addressed through the Stoic lens. By focusing on what we can control and accepting what we cannot, we find a clearer path to inner peace. One of the fundamental principles of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control, which teaches us to distinguish between what is within our control and what is not. This idea is crucial for maintaining serenity in challenging situations. When we encounter problems, we often waste energy worrying about aspects we cannot change. For instance, you may feel distressed about what others think of you or about external events affecting your life. Stoicism invites us to redirect our focus. Instead of letting ourselves be carried away by anxiety over what cannot be controlled, we can concentrate our actions and thoughts on our own response and attitude. The teaching of Epictetus is especially relevant here, as he asserted that it is not the things themselves that disturb us, but the way we interpret them. This means that we have the power to shape our reactions and consequently our experiences. When faced with a challenge, instead of reacting impulsively, we can pause and reflect on how our response can be more rational and balanced. This practice not only helps us face adversities with more clarity, but also strengthens our long-term resilience. In everyday life, applying the dichotomy of control can be as simple as reframing our thoughts. If you are facing a problem at work, instead of worrying about the possibility of being fired, ask yourself what you can actually do to improve your situation. This may mean working harder on your skills, communicating better with your colleagues, or even seeking new opportunities. By focusing on action, you reduce the mental paralysis and anxiety that often accompany uncertainty. Furthermore, Stoicism teaches us to cultivate a perspective of gratitude and acceptance. Instead of lamenting what we lack or what could have been, we learn to appreciate what we have and find meaning in the experiences we live. This does not mean ignoring challenges or difficulties, but rather approaching them with a mindset that seeks to learn and grow. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on the transience of life and the importance of living in the present. This attitude can help us maintain the right perspective even in difficult times. Stoicism also encourages us to practice virtue. In a world where many seek happiness in material goods or external approval, Stoic philosophers remind us that true happiness comes from acting in accordance with our values and principles. This pursuit of virtue can help us make decisions that align with who we truly are, rather than being swayed by external pressures or social expectations. Thus, we can build a life that fills us with satisfaction and purpose. Another important aspect of Stoicism is the idea that life is full of challenges and that adversity should not be seen as an obstacle, but as an opportunity for growth. Seneca, for example, spoke about how difficulties can shape us and make us stronger. This perspective helps us face difficult situations with a learning mindset, allowing us to become more resilient and adaptable. Ultimately, Stoicism provides us with a set of tools to navigate life more consciously and intentionally. By applying its principles, we can develop greater mental clarity, a sense of purpose, and the ability to face challenges with courage and serenity. In a world filled with uncertainties, this ancient philosophy offers us an anchor, helping us find balance amid chaos. Reflecting on the relevance of Stoicism in the modern context, it is evident that its lessons are timeless. The difficulties and uncertainties we face today are not different from those our ancestors faced. By adopting a Stoic mindset, we have the chance to transform our challenges into opportunities for growth and self-discovery. Therefore, as we consider the 10 vices that can destroy our lives, it is essential to remember that Stoic philosophy offers us a practical and effective approach to dealing with these problems. By focusing on what we can control, cultivating virtue, practicing gratitude, and viewing adversity as an opportunity, we can not only survive, but thrive amidst the difficulties that life presents us. The wisdom of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius continues to guide us, showing that even in tough times we can find a path to serenity and true happiness. Life is full of challenges and adversities that can lead us to a state of stress and anguish. Often we feel overwhelmed by the pressures of work, personal conflicts, or even the expectations that society imposes. In light of this, Stoic philosophy offers us a valuable perspective that can help us navigate these difficulties. One of the central concepts of Stoicism is the importance of virtue and wisdom. For Stoics, true happiness does not reside in fleeting pleasures or material goods, but rather in living a life of virtue, cultivating qualities such as courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom. To better understand this concept, let's consider some practical situations where virtue and wisdom can guide us. Imagine yourself in a work environment where the pressure is intense. Tight deadlines, excessive demands, and the need to meet the expectations of colleagues and superiors can create a stressful atmosphere. In this context, it is easy to be carried away by anxiety or irritation. However, if we cultivate the virtue of patience and the wisdom of maintaining a balanced perspective, we can face these situations more effectively. Instead of allowing stress to overwhelm us, we can choose to respond calmly, seek solutions, and keep our focus on our goals. Another practical example is dealing with personal conflicts. Often we find ourselves involved in disputes with friends or family, where intense emotions can cloud our judgment. The virtue of empathy and the wisdom of listening to the other side allow us to approach these situations with greater clarity. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can pause, reflect, and try to understand the other person's perspective. This approach not only helps to resolve the conflict more harmoniously, but also strengthens our relationships and promotes a healthier environment around us. Stoic philosophers, such as Epictetus, emphasize that virtue is the only truly good thing we can strive for. For them, life is a series of events that we cannot control, but how we respond to those events is under our control. This idea is liberating, as it reminds us that true strength lies in our capacity to choose. By cultivating virtue and wisdom, we develop the resilience needed to face the adversities life imposes on us. The practice of virtue is not something that is achieved overnight. It is a path that requires effort and dedication. Daily reflection on our actions and thoughts is essential to this process. We can set aside a moment each day to evaluate how we reacted to the situations we faced. Ask yourself, was acting with virtue my priority today? Did I seek wisdom in my decisions? This practice not only helps us grow as individuals, but also prepares us to deal with future challenges more effectively. One of the most important legacies of Stoicism is the idea that happiness does not depend on external factors, but rather on our own attitude and virtue. When we focus on cultivating virtue, we become less susceptible to external influences that can divert us from our path. This approach empowers us to face difficulties with a sense of purpose and clarity, allowing us to remain steadfast even in life's storms. Furthermore, the Stoics believed that wisdom is a virtue that develops through experience and reflection. Throughout our lives, we encounter a variety of situations that teach us valuable lessons. When we face these challenges as learning opportunities, we can grow in wisdom and become better equipped to handle future adversities. It is not uncommon that, upon reflecting on difficult moments, we realize that they shaped us and made us stronger. Therefore, by seeking virtue and wisdom in our lives, we are not only preparing ourselves to face the challenges that arise, but also building a solid foundation for a more meaningful and fulfilling life. The practice of virtue helps us develop a strong and resilient character, while wisdom guides us in the decisions we make. Together, these qualities allow us to live according to our values and principles, even in times of uncertainty. The teachings of Epictetus and other Stoic philosophers remind us that by prioritizing virtue and wisdom, we are investing in our long-term well-being. Instead of being led astray by vices that can destroy us, we can choose a path of growth and self-discovery. This choice is an act of courage that empowers us, allowing us to face life with an open heart and a clear mind. In conclusion, the importance of virtue and wisdom in Stoic philosophy is not just an abstract concept, but a practice that can transform our lives. By cultivating these qualities, we become more capable of facing the adversities that life presents to us. Reflecting on our actions and the constant pursuit of a virtuous life will guide us toward a fuller and more meaningful existence. Therefore, as we look at the challenges we face, let us remember the wisdom of the Stoics and the importance of choosing virtue in every decision we make. This choice will allow us not only to survive, but to thrive amidst the storms of life. Life is filled with challenges and difficulties that can lead us to complicated situations. Often, the vices we cultivate, such as emotional dependence, can be the greatest obstacles in our path. In this context, it is essential to explore the practice of emotional detachment, a fundamental concept in Stoic philosophy that can help us face these challenges with more resilience. By detaching ourselves from our emotions, especially in moments of loss or disappointment, we can maintain the calm and mental clarity we need to deal with adversities. Imagine a situation where you lose something valuable, whether it is a job, a relationship, or even the health of a loved one. The pain and sadness can be overwhelming, and it is natural to feel devastated. However, the practice of emotional detachment teaches us to observe these emotions without allowing ourselves to be dominated by them. Instead of identifying completely with the pain, we can recognize that it is a part of the human experience, but does not define who we are. This approach allows us to take a deep breath, reflect, and realize that while loss is difficult, it can also open space for new opportunities and personal growth. A practical example of this detachment can be found in the way we handle relationships. Often we become so emotionally dependent on another person that the idea of losing them causes us deep despair. However, by practicing detachment, we can learn to appreciate what we have without letting it consume us. We can cherish the memories and the moments shared while also recognizing that life is a constant flow of changes. This perspective allows us to live fully in each moment without the paralyzing fear of loss. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, deeply understood this dynamic. They practiced emotional detachment as a way to stay focused and balanced in the face of life's uncertainties. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, frequently reflected on the impermanence of things. He reminded us that everything is fleeting and that by overly attaching ourselves to something, we risk suffering. Stoic wisdom teaches us that true freedom comes from the ability to accept things as they are, without letting them bring us down. When we face difficulties such as losing a job, for example, it is easy to be swept away by despair and frustration. However, by applying the concept of emotional detachment, we can see this situation in a new light. We can understand that this change in circumstances is not a reflection of our personal worth, but rather an opportunity to reassess our options and find new paths. This shift in perspective is powerful and can help us face any challenge with courage and determination. Furthermore, the practice of emotional detachment does not mean that we should suppress our emotions or ignore them. Instead, it is about learning to observe our emotional reactions without fully identifying with them. When we can do this, we have the freedom to choose how to respond to situations rather than react impulsively. This skill is essential for dealing with life in a balanced and conscious way. In moments of disappointment, such as a relationship ending, we may feel tempted to plunge into sadness and anger. However, if we remember emotional detachment, we can choose to look at the situation from a different perspective. We can recognize that while the pain is real, it is also a part of the growth process. Detachment allows us to see that every ending is also a new beginning. This view encourages us to keep moving forward instead of clinging to what has already passed. Emotional detachment can also be a valuable tool in situations of loss. When we face the death of a loved one, the pain can be intense. However, practicing detachment helps us honor the person's memory while also accepting the reality of the loss. This does not mean we should forget or undervalue what we live together, but rather that we should find a space to celebrate life, while also dealing with the absence. Another important aspect of emotional detachment is the ability to distance ourselves from unrealistic expectations. Often, we cling to ideas of how things should be, which can lead to frustration and disillusionment. When we can detach from these expectations, we open space for acceptance and gratitude for what we already have. This shift in mindset can transform the way we experience life, allowing us to find joy in the small things, even amidst difficulties. Stoic teachings invite us to reflect on what truly matters in our lives. By practicing emotional detachment, we can focus on the present and value the experiences that truly have meaning. This helps us develop a resilience that allows us to face the ups and downs of life with more grace and wisdom. Therefore, as we explore the concept of emotional detachment, we remember that it is a continuous practice. It is not something learned all at once, but a process that requires patience and self-compassion. As we strive to detach, we can become more aware of our emotions and reactions, choosing how to respond to each situation. This practice brings us closer to Stoic philosophy, which teaches us to live more fully and meaningfully. In summary, emotional detachment is a powerful tool on our journey through life. It helps us face difficulties with more serenity and find balance amid chaos. By practicing detachment, we can cultivate an attitude of acceptance and gratitude, allowing life to flow more harmoniously. Thus, we become stronger and more resilient, capable of facing any vice that may try to destroy us. By dedicating ourselves to this practice, we not only transform our way of dealing with adversity, but also find a clearer path to true happiness. Living in accordance with nature is one of the central concepts of Stoicism, and invites us to reflect on our role in the world and how we relate to it. For the Stoics, nature does not only refer to the physical environment, but also encompasses human nature, our emotions, desires, and behaviors. Living in accordance with this nature implies recognizing that we are part of a greater whole, and that our actions should reflect this interconnectedness. By accepting our role in the world, we begin to act with integrity and rationality. This means that instead of being carried away by uncontrolled emotions or irrational desires, we should seek reason and virtue. Stoic philosophy teaches us that true happiness does not depend on external factors, but rather on how we behave in relation to them. By acting according to reason, we find a path that leads us to inner peace. A practical example of this concept is how we deal with adversity. Instead of reacting with anger or despair, we can see challenges as opportunities to grow and develop. This does not mean we should ignore our emotions, but rather that we should learn to control them and not let them dominate us. When we accept that life is full of ups and downs, we can cultivate an attitude of resilience and gratitude, even in tough times. Stoics like Epictetus emphasized the importance of living in harmony with nature. Epictetus said that it is not things that disturb us, but the opinion we have about things. This quote reminds us that the way we interpret life events is what truly affects us. If we can adjust our expectations and reactions, we will be better prepared to face difficulties with serenity. Another aspect of living in accordance with nature is recognizing human limitations. We are imperfect beings, and that is part of our condition. Accepting our shortcomings and learning from them is essential for personal growth. Instead of punishing ourselves for our mistakes, we can embrace them as lessons that will guide us on our path. This is an approach that promotes compassion, both for ourselves and for others. Moreover, community life is a reflection of human nature. The Stoics believed that we are social beings by nature, and that we should act with justice and kindness in our interactions. Living in accordance with nature also implies caring for the well-being of those around us, helping and supporting one another. This not only strengthens social bonds, but also brings us closer to a more virtuous life. Harmony with nature also extends to how we treat the world around us. Exploring and respecting the environment are reflections of a deeper understanding of our place in nature. We can view nature as a source of inspiration and learning. The beauty and complexity of the natural world can teach us about resilience, interconnectedness, and the importance of preservation. In times of stress or confusion, it may be helpful to remember the Stoic teaching that invites us to turn inward and find a space of tranquility. The practice of meditation and reflection are valuable tools that help us connect with our essence and the nature of our existence. By dedicating time to connect with our inner self, we begin to realize that peace is not something external, but rather a condition we can cultivate within us. Epictetus also teaches us to practice gratitude. He suggests that instead of focusing on what we do not have, we should value what we already possess. This shift in perspective not only brings us closer to nature, but also helps us find joy in the little things. When we appreciate the present and everything it offers, we begin to live more fully and consciously. Furthermore, living in accordance with nature requires us to be flexible and adaptable. Life is filled with changes and uncertainties, and our ability to adapt to these circumstances is crucial for our happiness and well-being. Stoic philosophy teaches us to embrace change, understanding that, just as the seasons change, we also go through different phases in our lives. Accepting this allows us to flow with life rather than fighting against it. Ultimately, it is important to remember that living in accordance with nature is an ongoing process. It is not about achieving a state of perfection, but rather about constantly seeking alignment between our actions, thoughts, and values. Each day is a new opportunity to practice virtue and reason, and every small step we take in that direction brings us closer to a fuller and more meaningful life. Therefore, as we reflect on what it means to live in accordance with nature, we can feel inspired to adopt a stance of acceptance, gratitude, and responsibility. By committing to act with integrity and cultivate inner peace, we not only benefit ourselves but also contribute to a more harmonious and just world. The lessons of the Stoics, such as those from Epictetus, guide us on this journey. reminding us of the importance of living in harmony with nature and ourselves. Now that we have explored the 10 vices that can destroy your life, it is important to reflect on the teachings of the philosopher Epictetus and how we can apply them in our daily lives. Vices like anger, greed, procrastination, and lack of self-control not only affect us individually, but also impact our relationships and the way we live. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what is within our control and to accept what we cannot change. When confronting these vices, we must remember that true freedom comes from within. We can choose how to react to situations, and it is this choice that defines our lives. Practicing self-awareness and daily reflection helps us identify behaviors that take us away from a full and meaningful life. Applying Stoic principles can transform the way we face challenges and adversities, allowing us to deal with them in a wiser and more balanced manner. Therefore, I invite you to put into practice the teachings we discussed. Start by observing your habits and reactions. Ask yourself, does this behavior bring me closer to or further away from what I truly desire? By taking small actions daily, you will be on the path to a more virtuous and fulfilling life. If you enjoyed this video and believe that these concepts can help others, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Leave your comment on how you plan to apply these teachings and share this content with friends and family. Together we can spread Stoic wisdom and help more people live more consciously and fully. To conclude, remember the words of Epictetus. It is not the things that happen to us that disturb us, but our opinion about them. May this reflection guide your actions and decisions, leading you to a life of greater serenity and purpose.